Hello guys and girls, and welcome to this special video where I will be looking back at the highlights of what I saw at Frightfest 2019. 20 bloody years of the horror film festival. Yes indeed, it was another pretty fantastic year. A lot of crazy stuff going on, a lot of special guests. Dario Argento was there with his new book. The Saskia sisters returned for the first time in 7 years. They were there in full force. They was terrifying, I can tell you, but they were an absolute blast. If you ever get a chance to meet the Saskia sisters, then do not pass it up. They are quite something, I can tell you. And I'll be talking about their new film Rabid on this video. So yes, I did pretty well this year. I ended up seeing 9 films over the 5 or 6 days, which I'm pretty pleased with. I saw a diverse range of films and met some great people once again. So I'm going to be briefly talking about the films. I won't do full-on reviews, but I can tell you, if you're interested in more Frightfest content and more of my opinions on the films, then you can listen to my Beyond Radio show, which takes place this Thursday at 8 PM UK time. You can listen to it online at beyondradio.co.uk. Now I will tell you, I've already done part 1 of my Frightfest review on there, so you've missed part 1, although you can actually catch up with it in the archives. There is a listen again tab on the website, so if you go to beyondradio.co.uk you can listen to last week's show, which was the first half of my Frightfest review, and then this coming Thursday I will have part 2 and I'll go into more details then. Also on that show I will be giving my review of the new Quentin Tarantino film Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, although you can possibly expect a review of that on this channel before then, so a lot of crossover. And I'll also give my review of Crawl, the new alligator horror movie from the director of Switchblade Romance, which actually there is a review also up on here, so a lot of crossover. It won't always work out that way, but just to point out, yeah, there is a Frightfest special on the radio this coming Thursday. So I've already done Crawl. That was one of the big premieres at Frightfest, so you can find my review on this channel, and I'll also be discussing it Thursday. But without any further ado, I'll get into the films I did see at Frightfest. So on the opening night, my first film of the festival and one of the big premieres was Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. This is of course the teaming of Guillermo del Toro as a producer, and also he had a hand in the script, and also the director of Troll Hunter, which was a popular film amongst horror fans a few years ago. So interesting combo there. This of course based on sort of like graphic novels, scary stories for sort of a teen audience, so sort of similar to things like Goosebumps or Grimm's Fairy Tale, if you like. And so my verdict on it is mixed, really. I think certainly generic is a word I would use. It's a very generic film, particularly in the second half as it goes along. You know, that the first half is pretty solid, I think, but the more and more it goes on, yeah, the more generic it becomes. They overdo it with the CGI, which you lose the sense of threat. And the monsters end up looking a little bit cheesy and lacking in presence. I mean, one thing I did like, the cast was solid. I thought the actors did a pretty good job. And I also liked the fact that they weren't stereotypical whiny sort of teens, which sometimes you get in horror movies. But the problem was, although I quite liked the actors and the characters didn't annoy me like sometimes they do, they weren't really given much of an arc over the film. So they went from a certain point where they were, fine and enjoyable, quite likable, but they didn't really grow from that point. They didn't really. I think the cast did their best, but the writing just wasn't there. There were a couple of good sort of set piece jump scenes which I thought were well done, but overall I didn't really find it scary. And as I said, I think you lost that threat throughout the film as the CGI started mounting up, and it just became more predictable, more generic, as I said, and pretty typical. I mean, it's not a film that's going to last long in the memory for me. And obviously, there's this divide in the UK because really these are more US based books. They're much more well known over there. And it's telling that the film has made a lot of money over there already. I don't think it will make anywhere near as much in the UK. But we're going to get a sequel. I mean, the ending is just sequel heavy, sequel-tastic, the way it's clearly setting one up. But anyway, that's scary stories to tell in the dark. My second movie of the festival, a bit of a change in pace because it's more of a sci-fi, but with a horror mystery sort of element, and that is a film called Dark Encounter. So Laura Fraser, who I think is a terrific actress, she plays a mum, and along with her husband Ray, they lose their 8-year-old kid, and then she goes missing one day. They leave her at home, and mysteriously she disappears, and then it sort of jumps. The movie jumps 1 year later, and they come back from a memorial service for the daughter with friends and family, and it's a pretty big cast. I have to tell you, Alice Lowe is in the cast. She plays Laura Fraser's Olivia, the character's name, her sister, and you don't get many scenes of them together, but actually I did like them as a pair. I believed in them as sisters, and they played off each other quite well. You sort of believed in a lot of their dialogue. But this is Alice Lowe, I mean, really trying to be a bit more serious, playing it a bit more straight, because this is a pretty full-on movie in terms of, hard-hitting things and just played a bit more straight, a little too straight in my opinion at times. So they arrive home 1 year later, and suddenly there's a strange light that appears from the local woods, and obviously we're going into alien UFO territory, visitors from another planet, but there are twists to that. So this leads to secrets being revealed about the past and about the disappearance of Olivia's daughter. So I wasn't so keen on the first half. It did drag a bit, and I felt some of the setup with the family was a bit clunky. I sort of felt it was quite melodramatic at times, and that dragged it down. I think it did take itself a bit too seriously, and it was just a bit over the top. It felt a bit jarring, some of the family scenes, quite stagey in a way. So it could have done with there are jokes in there, but I think it could have done with a bit more of a mix of light and dark. But slowly, once it gets going, I think actually it's a pretty decent film. So believe it or not, they actually shot this in Yorkshire. The director and the cast were saying this, and obviously it's meant to be in like Southern America, the sticks somewhere. And they did this for budget reasons, and hats off to them. They really used the location very well, because you are convinced it is somewhere in Southern America. And there is a nice small town vibe to it, quite a creepy sort of atmosphere at times, quite a distinct sort of setting. So that stuff is well done. And also, I think once they get into the sci-fi and genre elements of the film works much better, because I think there is a visual flair to it and a sort of a mood and atmosphere once you get into those elements. I mean, obviously it's been talked as a kind of a Spielberg-esque, like, in the mold of his 80s sci-fi, and you can certainly see those links. And obviously I'm not going to put it up with those, but I think it does have a style, it does have a sense of wonder in some of the visuals. And I think once you get into those elements and the mystery elements, the film's just much more engaging and interesting. And I was invested in Laura Fraser's character. I think she's really underrated. And I said this, I quickly saw her at the festival, and I said, you really moved me. You're underrated, because she is great. When the film focuses on her a bit more in the back half, and we get these revelations, I think she really sells it to you. She's really the heart of the film, and her performance, particularly at the end of the film, is actually really moving. So it sort of brings it back around. So it is a little bit up and down. I thought the twist actually was quite well handled. It's quite an interesting little twist. And I may feel more positive on the film as I rewatch it. I think I will watch it again. I know some people I spoke to at the festival weren't so up on it. I mean, I'm not huge on it, but I think it was good enough in the end. It sort of pulled it back around. So I'll probably go... actually, I didn't rate Scary Stories. Scary Stories, I'll go down the middle. I'll give about a 5 to. This, I'll go a bit higher. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. So that's Dark Encounter. And Dark Encounter should be landing in UK cinemas in October. So not too long to wait. That's Dark Encounter. And my third movie of the festival, and this is potential standout film of the festival for me, it's a film called Bliss. And this is the other end of the spectrum, because although Dark Encounter was quite low budget, this is really low budget, really art house, grimy sort of cult film. And it's shot on 16mm, which is obviously very rare, and it really works. It really adds to the mood of the film and the style. So to set up the story, it's about a really radical painter who's really edgy and has a cult following, but she's suffering the worst mental block, or the worst creative block, I should say, of her career. And the pressure is sort of mounting on her to get her masterpiece done and out there, because there's threats she could be kicked out of her studio. So she goes to these extremes to get it done, and that includes taking this drug called Bliss, the bliss of the title, and then she goes on these wild binges, all sorts of sexual activities, and she literally goes, not literally, I mean that's a bit much, but yeah, it's a hellish nightmare. And that's when the horror element comes in, and you get a whole horror element that comes from her taking this drug and her whole mental state. So first of all, obviously the style, what you get is, it feels like one long drawn out drug trip, this nightmarish visuals, really poppy sort of colour schemes. and yeah, you do feel like you're on this trip with her, like you're hallucinating. That experience that cinema should have, of this dreamlike, nightmarish sort of quality. And yeah, it's really unsettling. There's lots of handheld camera angles, lots of in-your-face shots, really fast-paced sort of editing at times, shaky cameras. And it's really balls to the wall DIY type filmmaking. It's really unnerving. The actress is really good. She really throws herself into it. And I think what you get with this film is it's a mix of like a sort of a classic sort of trashy type film where yeah, there's a lot of silly over the top dialogue and acting and just insane stuff going on, but at the same time it is so stylish and you're so seduced into this insane world, then it's got those elements as well. So it's almost the best of both. And what I like about the style, I should say also, is the fact that it feels like those really gritty, nasty, sort of murky, big city films of the 70s, or it has the unforgiving feels of the big cities, how those films were shot in the 70s, where it was all grimy and grungy and just nasty. And I have a nostalgia for those times. Well, not a nostalgia because I wasn't around, but I love those movies. I love those styles. And obviously for a horror movie, it works great. So I thought this was a blast. It was unnerving. It was entertaining. There was some great practical effects involved. It was obviously one hell of a trip, which I just went for. And it's one of those, you're either going to go for it and just love how insane it is, or it's not going to be for you. And it clearly divided people at the festival. I spoke to different people, and it was a mixed reaction. Some people really hated it, some people really loved it, and there were walkouts on the night of the film. And although the director said, well, I would prefer it if they'd stayed, at the same time, it's pretty impressive if your film gets that sort of reaction. And sometimes the most divisive films are the best, really, or the most interesting. But it does have this sort of cult feel to it, this sort of like midnight type movie type vibe to it, a bit like Near Dark. There's elements of those. So it's one I'm going to return to. I really loved it. That is Bliss, and I should mention, because I've been mentioning this all the time, but Norm from Cheers is in it. George Witt himself, a comedy legend. And I asked them afterwards, how did you get Norm from Cheers, or George Witt? And they said, well, he was in Reanimator the musical with us, and that's just a blast. Just imagine watching Reanimator the musical with George Witt. So as soon as he turned up on screen, I knew this film was for me, and he really goes for it. So that's Bliss. So I highly recommend it. Look out for it. It's not out yet. My next couple reviews are a bit more lighter, a bit more easygoing, but very tongue in cheek. And they are The Drone, which is literally a film about a killer drone. So there's this insane plot where it sort of gets someone's soul incarnated in it, if you like, or however it works. And so it's like a serial killer drone, literally, of course, as happens all the time. And then this sort of like stereotypical but entertaining movie douchebag guy gets the drone and just loves it, just loves playing with it, but on the other hand it drives his girlfriend nuts, and it starts wreaking havoc with their lives, with hilarious results. I'm not sure if I should give away spoilers for The Drone or not, but it's it's just a blast. Just sit back and enjoy. It's a perfect piss take of, you know, these macho sort of 80s films. And it goes through all the conventions, but put into this really cheesy, really silly horror sort of comedy. There's some fantastic dialogue, like, don't fuck with modern technology. And at one point, the girlfriend goes, I hate that drone. And then the husband's like, or the boyfriend, he's like, babe, it's the refrigerator. So you get the sort of vibe, and there's references to The Shining. The scene of the film is probably the shot of the drone rocking back and forth sinisterly in the rocking chair, and it's an absolute trip. You know, just get it on DVD, watch it online, get some beers, get some mates around. It's an absolute blast, and yeah, it becomes this whole thing where the drone starts framing him with things. You get a drone versus dog sort of thing. I won't say anything else because you probably should go in clean. Hey, it's the drone after all. You've got to go in fresh. So absolutely loved it. And on a similar note, although not quite as silly and crazy, but I also saw Halloween Party. So Halloween Party is essentially about a group of 5 disfigured kids. They're the Halloween party of the title. And they take vengeance on the world because they've been mistreated, they feel. And so their curse has been, you know, sort of banished. But then this online computer game, and I'm assuming it's meant to be set in the 80s or something, just because of how the computer looks. Or it could be 90s. But anyway, this like Halloween themed computer game which asks you, you know, your worst fears. It basically is the key. It sets off the virus to their curse being released from the grave, and they decide to take out their angst on a group of college students. And so it's down to the lead, Grace, and also Spencer, who's like this nerdy computer hacker, to try and sort things out, to try and stop the virus from spreading. And there's lots of funny in-jokes, there's lots of swipes at films like Final Destination, like some of the cheesy sort of cop crime dramas you get on network TV nowadays, of just internet culture and jock culture in general. It's very cine literate. There's a lot of good like film references, although sometimes they overdo that a bit, but there's some smart stuff in there. It's not as sharp as something like Scream, for example, but it's pretty witty and tongue-in-cheek. I wasn't sure going in, similar to the drone, I wasn't sure if it was going to be tongue-in-cheek or something a bit more serious. But it was tongue-in-cheek, and it had a charm to it. I think it had a sense of adventure. The leads had good chemistry. I thought they carried it quite well. Yeah, it's not perfect. There's things wrong with it, but I thought it was a pretty solid watch, and it sort of hit the mark. It was solid is the word with the jokes and the chemistry between them. I keep forgetting to rank these. I mean, Drone, I'm not sure you can rank because rate because it's such a guilty pleasure, such an entertaining film. But it's pretty good fun, and Halloween Party is solid fun as well. I'd probably give that about a 6 or a 6.5. Which brings me on to the final day where I was lucky enough to see four films, and the first one was.
Oh yeah.
Okay. You alright?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Alright, I'm just doing a video, but okay. Alright. But it's alright. Okay. Yes, so my next film is For We Are the Many, which was a British anthology movie. This was at the other cinema, the Prince Charles, on the Monday. And I mean, it's a pretty typical anthology. There was a lot of parodies, a lot of send ups. It felt like a lot of actors enjoying sort of getting dressed up and taking the mickey out of various things. And it was fine, it was solid. I just felt it was overdone and needed to be edited down. I felt that with most of the stories, where most of them were pretty good, pretty solid, but it got to the point with most of them where they just overdid what they were doing and they needed to be edited down. And I think that really lost the flow of some of the films, some of the stories, and so it's fine. It's worth watching and everything, but yeah, it would have been better, I think, with sort of tighter editing. So yeah, that's We Are the Many, which is an anthology film. So if you, yeah, I'm sure you'll be able to find that somewhere. And then the next film was The Wretched, which is a very interesting film. God's sake. So The Wretched by the Pierce brothers. And so it's set in a very Stephen King-esque town. And so the plot is that a teenage boy is living with with a single parent, his father. They sort of have a rough relationship, but he has to spend the summer with him, and his father starts seeing another woman, so there's issues there. But the son's working at the local pool, at like the boating sort of arena. So it goes through some of the issues of that sort of like period of your life as a teen. He's a very awkward sort of character, but he starts witnessing strange behaviour at the neighbour's house, basically, and starts suspecting supernatural activity with the woman next door. And he sort of befriends this girl who there's a bit of a chemistry with, and slowly but surely things unravel and supernatural things involving witches start happening. So that's kind of the basis of the film. Now the film's really interesting. As I said, it does have this sort of small town sort of feeling. It has it's almost ripped out of like a Stephen King type story, sort of novel, and it has this very distinct nostalgic sort of vibe to it, and the mood of it. And it does have a charm. It really balances a lot of things. My only real critique of it is that there's a lot going on, even in the first half of the film. There's a lot of different characters and a lot of like setup, and some of that did sort of confuse me. And I'd say once you get past the setup, it's actually a really good film. It's one hell of a ride. I think the lead character is really likable, and they do a flip flop with him and the girl, where actually she's actually more of the guy sort of thing, in a way, the way she acts, and he's the more sort of sensitive type one. So I like that touch. I thought the acting was good, and it's one hell of a ride because there's so much to it. There's so many different elements. So you are given characters you can engage with I think, most successful horror, it has stakes and characters you believe in and you care about what's happening to them. And this is what this film has. So it is a throwback film where you are supposed to enjoy the characters. There's a lot of good comedy, there's a lot of charm. Some of the comedy's really black, actually. It has a good look to it, a good style. There's some really impressive creature effects. It's well cast, and it's really gross. There's some great horror moments as well. So it's a slow burn, but it really does deliver on the horror elements. But it's got a bit of everything, I feel. I mean, it was maybe just the slightly slow and confusing like first half of the film, where there's maybe a bit too much going down happening. I think that's the only thing that drags it down a little bit. But apart from that, yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think it's one of the gems of Frightfest. So that's The Wretched, which is from the Pierce brothers, who I know have a bit of a history. And I can see that should get a general release. I'm really hoping for a general release. It was fantastic. I mean, that's one I'm going to be rewatching. So The Wretched. And speaking of unexpected surprises, we have the Banana Splits movie. Yes, the Banana Splits movie. A movie which I went into blind, because when people were telling me, hey, it's like a kids' TV show, I was like, what? I've never heard of it. But then as soon as I got in there and the music cranks in and it's this cheesy kids thing, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I know this one. So yeah, that's how they do it. It's like a horror setup, but involving the Banana Splits character, them coming to life, them sucking defenseless kids and adults in, specially selected contestants who go to like a taping, and there's this whole family thing. So it's kind of like Willy Wonka meets Gremlins meets Child's Play in a way. It's this really twisted sort of horror movie with a lot of really hilarious dark comedy, but also a sense of adventure, that it really gets you in that way. There's a childlike quality to it, although there's a lot of like really gut turning sort of moments. There's a lot of really funny lines and dialogue, and again you get some good characters thrown in, and it just works. I mean, I came out with my brain sort of scrambled and sort of thinking, well, how did that work so well? But it just does. It just sets these things up and it pays it off. And I mean, if you enjoy the sort of film where the kids are the heroes and where they're kind of, I mean, you get a couple of good adults character. The mother of the kid, of the main kid, it is, she's very likable and she has some great moments. And there's an arc to her as well, because she's sort of seeing this douchey guy at the start of the film, and gradually she realizes, yeah, this guy's just no good. He's a total douchebag, and she eventually stands up to him. So there's an arc to her as well. But yeah, you get really great fun kids characters, and there's a lot of just punch the air type moments. The Banana Splits, I can't believe I'm saying it, but I loved a Banana Splits themed horror movie. So that's another gem for you, the Banana Splits, which I'm sure will be coming to a cinema near you pretty soon. Just try and stop them, basically. And that brings me to perhaps the big closing night movie. That is The Rabbit from the Saskia sisters. So the remake of David Cronenberg's 1977 body horror. And as they were saying at the festival, Cronenberg was involved in the film. He produced it. He was very hands-on. And I think I'm very positive on it. I think it's another one where the start was a bit slow and there was a bit of, some stuttering moments where I thought, oh god, this isn't going to be this great. But once I got into it, I really enjoyed it. And I think if you're a Saskia Sisters fan, I think if you're a David Cronenberg fan, I think it's going to hit all the right notes. I think it gets that balance of honouring Cronenberg's vision, but also doing something really different and modernising it. And the Saskia sisters, I think, are really into putting like feminist sort of twists on like body horror type films, and you get this in this, and it really examines like I think just how harsh these industries are on women, and how it takes a toll both emotionally and physically on them. And it really has a good time sending up, the glamour and the ego, the male ego in particular of the industry. And like classic Cronenberg, it is very fleshy and slippery and very unsettling, and really edgy. And I think also just with it being a bit more trashy, like a Saskia Sisters film, there are scenes where it's just hammed up to 11 to really good effect. I thought the lead actress was good, did a really good job, and I liked it. I was nervous going in, but I think they've done a good job, and they've crowned it American Mary too. So if you like that film, you should like Rabid, which is coming out in October apparently around Halloween, so not too long to wait. And they said at the festival then there's a new DVD of the original movie, which also showed at Frightfest, and it's got a new commentary with the Saskia sisters on. And there are plans ahead, as the Saskia sisters themselves said, to do more Cronenberg. Apparently, next time they're going to remake Dead Ringers, which is interesting. Because to me, that's an even better Cronenberg film. I mean, that's one of his best. So that's going to be interesting. But they certainly have his blessing. And another nice touch with Rabid was the fact that it had lots of little touches, lots of nods to Cronenberg. So, for example, like there's a mental institution which is called the William Burroughs Institute, which is obviously a nod to the fact that Cronenberg adapted Naked Lunch, a Burroughs novel. And also there's a clear visual sort of motif which is nodding and referencing Dead Ringers. So there's lots of nice Cronenbergian moments and nods to hardcore Cronenberg fans. So Rabid, I'm pleased to say, is a success, and goddamn, I love those Saskia sisters. They've done a good job, and they were really turning it up at the festival. So that is my review of Frightfest 2019. If you were at the festival and want to leave a comment, want to comment on my thoughts on these films, if you disagree, then feel free to express that. But also, if you saw other films which I haven't covered and want to give your thoughts on those and say what your highlight was, then feel free also. But that's Frightfest 2019, and you can hear more on my radio show this Thursday. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.